All right, we're sitting down today with Fred Dible here. He's with the Nazarene Church, right? Um,
Yes,
Starts as a group on Mondays for addicts.
yes,
And
mission transformed.
Mission Transform, correct? Yep. So, like I was telling you before, it's just a conversation. You're in control of the story. Pass on any question. We just want people to hear from you. So, start with just tell me a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, all that.
Okay, well, as he said, my name is Fred Dible. I grew up here in Bucyrus. I was born in 1976. I had lived here my whole life till about 10 or 15 years ago. I grew up with two sisters and a mom and dad. And when I was 6 years old, they got divorced, and I'd moved around with my mom, and then I ended up living with my grandma here in Bucyrus. You know, times were good living with my grandma. I remember her getting buckets of ice cream and us watching big time wrestling on Saturday night and the Dukes of Hazzard on Friday night and stuff like that. But I got too cool for my grandma, and when I was 12 and 13 years old, I started hanging out with neighborhood kids. And it started out that we would shoplift bottles of Mad Dog 2020. And I'm not proud of that now. I'm ashamed that some of the things I've done, but I just want to be honest and where I came from. And we would steal those bottles and we would go out to the train cars at Transco and drink them and throw up. Orange Jubilee was the nastiest thing ever. And, that just started something in my life that I didn't realize how bad it was until several years later. Because before the throwing up started, it was kind of fun. And I don't want to glorify that stuff, but we would smoke cigarettes that we stole from our parents, and we would hang out and run the town and break our curfew and just do things that aren't right. And, it led to a lifestyle that some of those friends I was hanging out with, they grew up. I never really grew up. I continued to want to drink. I continued to want to smoke pot, marijuana. And then other things started coming into my life. In the 17-year-old range till I was 38, I fell in love with marijuana. And then I experienced Vicodin and Percocets for the first time. And I fell in love with those things. Crack cocaine, that's the devil right there. I started smoking that stuff and snorting cocaine. And it got to a point between 20 years old and up, I did it all just to get high or drunk. You know, it got to the point where I couldn't afford those things, so I had to lie to get those things. I had to steal, manipulate, and do whatever it took to get high and drunk. And I had a lot of friends when it first started out, but I burned a lot of bridges here in town. And, I hurt my family, I hurt some friends, and I took advantage of a lot of people. Back then, people called me Durf, as my name spelled backwards. So, it got to a point when I was younger, I was popular, everyone liked me. But then when I would come down the street, people would pull their blinds and lock their doors because they knew I'd probably want to rob from them or lie to them. And just, they didn't want to be around me. So that lifestyle led me to go to prison. When I was 20 years old, I tried to shoplift whiskey from the Geyers out there by the bowling alley here in Bucyrus. And when I was stealing the whiskey, a store clerk seen me and we tussled. And in the state of Ohio, if you run or show violence during a theft, it's robbery. So they gave me a 3-year prison sentence and guaranteed me a judicial release after 6 months. And I didn't last after I did my 6 months. I came home on probation and went back in, and it just created a lifestyle that wasn't good. Coming home from prison in 2001 after being in 3 times and in and out of the county jail several times, I finally decided that I wanted to do right. I wanted to clean my life up. I wanted to work. I wanted to be a family man. And I didn't have a family yet, but I was going to try to get one. There was a local business here in town called Burns Landscape and Fence. He always believed in me and he gave me a job, and I ended up working there about 10 or 12 years, and he would deal with my alcoholism. I would get arrested and go to jail, and he would come out to the jail to either bond me out or see if he could bond me out so I could come back to work. And he was a true blessing in my life, but I just couldn't get it together. But at this point in 2001, I finally said, hey, I'm going to do what it takes. I got a girlfriend. I started working 2 jobs. And then, the relationship with the girlfriend didn't work out. She had her own ideas. I had my own ideas. And when that blew up, guess what? I started drinking again. I started doing drugs. And this time in 2001, the drugs were more potent. They were more dangerous. And it was just harder to kick. So I stayed on drugs for a long time. And when I was 38 years old, I finally decided that I'd had enough. I had some money in my pocket the day before, and I went and got crack, and I smoked it all up. And there was this drug called K2 that was going around, and I got some of that too. And I told my friend, I said, okay, I'm going to go do this, keep that K2 with you. When I come home, that's how I'll fall asleep, and I'll worry about tomorrow. And I smoked all the crack up. I went to his house. He robbed me. I argued with him. He put me out of his house. So I'm 38 years old with nowhere to go, homeless at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was just like devastated, and I was blaming everyone else for my problems. But see, when I was in jail and I was in prison, people were talking to me about God. And I was reading the Bible. When you're locked up in a cell with nowhere to go, you always want to read something. So I was reading the Bible. And the Bible started getting in my heart, and it started stirring up stuff that I didn't know. And I was so mad at my life and so upset with I'm 38 years old. There's no hope for me. I have no education. I have no job. I have no family that loves me. But something inside of me wouldn't give up. So I'm walking the streets on this particular night with nowhere to go. And I'm like, God, if you're real, show me something. If you're real, show me. And I don't know if people would have seen me or heard me. They probably thought I was crazy. But that's what happened. And, a thought came in my mind to go to my nephew's house. My nephew was upset with me. I think I had robbed him, and took advantage of him. But I had nowhere to go. So I went and knocked on his door, and he welcomed me in. He said, man, I guess you can come in. Just don't eat all my food up, and we'll worry about it tomorrow. And he let me stay there. The next day, I made a couple phone calls, and my sister showed up. And she's like, okay, we'll get you out of here, and we'll take you to Mansfield. So I was over in Mansfield. Mansfield's community is pretty big on food kitchens. And there's churches all up and downtown there. And so the only way I could eat was go to the food kitchen, because my sister put me in a house where she really wasn't at. She wasn't paying the rent there. It was a house that was, an eviction notice was coming soon, but it was a place for me to sit for a few days to figure things out. And I was going to the soup kitchens, and I was going to these churches, and God started answering my prayers. He put these people in my life from Galleon. There's a church over there called Victory Rock Praise and Worship Center. And I met these people, and, they paved the way for me to go to rehab. And they also, there's a rehab in Youngstown called Teen Challenge, which was very, very good for me. I learned about the Bible. I got clean and sober. And then the pastor and his wife from Victory Rock welcomed me in their home. And that was a weird experience for me. I came from the streets where I had to lie and steal to make my way, or to get high, or get whatever I needed. And then these people are actually trusting me, and they're believing me when I tell them things, and they're allowing me in their home. Basically, they were showing me love that I'd never felt before from anyone else. So it was really stirring up my heart. So these guys let me live in their house for like 10 months, and they had a church. So living there was rules. I had to work a job, which they helped provide me with a job. I couldn't believe that they would get up every morning and make sure I made it to work a job, to help someone out that had been hurting people their whole life. And now these people are showing me grace and mercy that I never experienced before. So that started working something in my heart. And I'm like, okay, there's some type of new devotion that's building up in my heart. Like, I owe them my life. Even though they knew it was God working through them to help me and they didn't want nothing for it, it still was stirring up something inside of me, like, wow, I owe something here. Well, I learned later on in life that I just owe my life to God now, that He poured His grace and mercy out on me. And, when I'm living there for 10 months, like I said, they made me go to church. So I was going to church service with them all the time, and they would bring home people that were from the church to the house, and I didn't know church people. I'd never been around church people. I'd been around people that cussed, drank, stole, did drugs, fought, did all bad things. And now I'm in an environment with people that are nice and they're loving and kind and they actually care about you. Well, that started a whole shift in my life. I started thinking differently. I started feeling differently. At first I'm like, what do they want from me? But then I learned that they didn't want nothing from me, and my life started changing. And the most insane thing in my life, in that part of my life, was when they were helping me and they were showing me that people really do care about people, and it's God caring through them, that they love people. Is they had me serving in their church, and they would pass around the offering, and they would bring back this pan of all the offering money, and they would hand it to me and trust me to put it in the safe. I'm telling you what, sometimes there would be thousands of dollars in that plate, but every bit of it always went into the safe. All I can say was God was changing my life. And for the first time in my life, I felt loved. I felt like there was hope that, I could overcome the addiction and the alcoholism in my life. That I no longer had to look back to that stuff, that even though I grew up in Bucyrus with no diploma, with no job history, that there still was a way that I could be successful and that God could turn my life around. So I stayed in that church for about 8 years. And, I owe my life to God because I believe in God. I believe that Jesus heard my cry and He poured out mercy over my life, and that stirred up something in my heart. So after being in the church for about 5 years, God brought me a wife to the church. I met this lady. She was on our praise and worship team, and we ended up getting married. And I moved from Bucyrus to Galleon, and then when I met her, she had a house in Mansfield, so I just kept heading further away from Bucyrus. And at this point, I'm clean and sober. I'm clean and sober for over 5 years. I just got married to my wonderful wife, and I adopted her daughter. Things are really good. But I felt something in my heart that I wanted to give back to the community. I was being pulled away further from Bucyrus, but my heart was always to come back here and share with people that knew Durf, that knew how bad Durf was, that you can change, that there's hope. And there was a funeral, and one of my dear friends I had known since I was a kid passed away. She overdosed, and she had a funeral, and her father asked me to be a part of the funeral, and there was a pastor. He was officiating the funeral. So when it was my time to speak, some of the people that I've known in my life here in Bucyrus came up to me and started shaking my hand and hugging me and telling me they were proud of me. And it got the attention of the pastor that was sitting beside me. And he asked to talk to me after the service. And so I shared with him what I'm sharing with you now. And he was like, well, would you like to help out with our recovery group? We want to help but we really don't know how. And your story sounds like that people can relate to you. And he called me, and we set up this program. And now here in Bucyrus, I get to put back into the community. I get to share my story and share what God's done in my life. So every Monday night at 6 p.m. at the Bucyrus Nazarene Church, we have a recovery group called Mission Transformed. And, our mission is to see people's lives changed. My heart is to see someone that lived like I did or grew up the way I did, that somehow, some way, that they can see that there's hope in this life and that their life can be transformed. Not everyone believes in Jesus, but I believe in Jesus. And I want people to know, if you're feeling like there's no hope or there's change in your life, if you cry out to him, he is faithful. And he's completely changed my life. Not only has he opened up this recovery group so I can be a resource or a tool to show other people, no matter what you've done. I've smoked crack. I've hurt people that I love. I've been in prison for stealing. I've done a lot of bad things. But see, God washed that clean. And now I've had the same job for 10 years. I'm a married man. I have a child that loves me. And everything that I never thought that I could achieve in life, now I'm achieving. So if there's anything that comes from this story, I would just want people to know, no matter who you are or what your last name is or what you've done, that your life can change. And if you're interested, come out to Mission Transformed. I'd love to talk to you and share a little bit more in depth of my story, or try to help you with resources. Logan asked if I knew of any programs, and I've heard of the Maryhaven program, but I heard they left. In Willard, Ohio, they have a detox center, and they're helping. There's a place in Mansfield called the CAC. I don't know what CAC stands for, but they're trying to help. Here in Bucyrus, the community counseling is offering intensive outpatient programming. They want to help. But the churches, they want to help too. They just don't know how totally, but their heart isn't helping. They want to see people that are struggling, that are broken, that are hurting, that they no longer hurt and they no longer are broken. They want to see their life restored. So there's a lot of programs that I see churches are starting. We have Mission Transformed on Monday nights. Over in Mansfield, there's a group called Mansfield Recovery, and they do 2 recovery meetings every week. They do Tuesday and they do Friday. And their church is so amazing. Like, they just love these people and they lift them up and encourage them. Gallion, Ohio at Victory Rock, they do a Friday night deliverance class. So people are trying. But see, I think we, as the ones that are struggling with drugs and alcohol, we really have to make a commitment and say, hey, I'm done living that way. And when we get to that point and we really cry out with a pure heart and really mean it, I believe there's hope for you. So, I don't know. Thank you for this interview, Logan. I appreciate it. I hope that somebody that's watching right now that's struggling and feels like there's no hope, there is hope. And don't give up hope. You don't have to live like that anymore. And with that being said, that's pretty much all I have.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was fantastic. Something I noticed was you get emotional when you're talking. I mean, we're talking about something very emotional, but when you talk about the people that helped you, do you seem to get more emotional when you talk about the people like your sister, your nephew, people like that. I found myself personally, that's what always cracks me up and makes, and I can, when people go out of their way to help me, it makes me emotional the same way it makes you emotional. I think that's a testament to how, sometimes when we're struggling, just that little helping hand, sometimes that means everything.
Yeah. When pastor and his wife and those people at that church started loving on me. I didn't understand it, but it sure felt good.
Yeah.
As a lot to, when you're hooked on drugs, there's a mindset that starts setting in your mind and heart that you're not worthy and all this negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, some way, that love pierced through all that junk, and it really gave me hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Fred. This is a fantastic interview. Yeah, if anyone is out there struggling, just reach out, say something. You got plenty of people out here like Fred who are willing and able to help. So, Mission Transform,
Yes.
Mondays, 6 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.